The book moves on to a brief discussion of file transfer protocol. This can be very useful because if you have really large files, you can't email those, but you do need a way to transfer those across the internet, and FTP servers will do that. You have a client that connects to a server, and then you just point to whatever file it is you either want to retrieve or send, and then it's sent. FTP is inherently insecure. Everything is sent in clear text, and any authentication is also sent in clear text. In Server 2008, there is a version of FTP that uses secure sockets so that data can be encrypted. My recommendations for FTP hosting are along the same as it is for web hosting. Unless you have to do it on your own box, go find somebody else to host your FTP sites for you. Let them deal with the exposure and the security. In the section Understanding Network Protocols, the book covers 3 common protocols that you use in network management. All of these are subject to exploits, so if you don't have a need for them, then go ahead and disable them. SNMP is the Simple Network Management Protocol, and you can use this to control all sorts of devices or to get notification of issues. ICMP, I think everybody is familiar with this. You use that for the ping command, but it's also used for messaging and some error control. It's a good idea to disable ping at the router level, especially to inbound traffic, but within your network it can be a really good troubleshooting device, so think twice before you actually disable that internally. The heart of your infrastructure is going to be the hardware and the cabling, and so the book has a pretty detailed section on the basics of cabling, wires, and communications. Coaxial cable has been used for a long time. It's shielded and it's great for transmissions. It's kind of a pain to work with because it requires terminators and special cabling, and I think these days if you run into a coax installation you're probably going to want to change it out. However, there are some advantages to using it. Most people these days use unshielded twisted pair, which is cheap, easy to work with. I'm not so good at putting ends on it, but you can hire people to do that. Unshielded twisted pair, though, is subject to interference. If you're not careful about the placement of those wires, you can get signal interruption. Don't run them in the ceiling over fluorescent lights. Don't run the cabling in a wall next to a bunch of electrical outlets. Fiber optic cable is more secure than either coax or twisted pair cabling. What it uses is light as the medium, and it transmits over glass. Glass is what's inside the fiber optic cable. You can bend fiber optic cable, but you want to be very gentle about that, and you can't have any sudden curves. If you do have a curve, you need to have a pretty big radius with it. And it's easy to step on it or bend it and kink it, and then at that point you've got to do some splicing because you can't transmit across that. I think I mentioned that at the Missoula County Detention Facility we ran fiber optic cable throughout the building because we had too much metal in the walls with the cinder block and the rebar to run twisted pair. Even with shielded twisted pair, there was still going to be a little bit too much interference, so we went with fiber. There are some wireless communications that the book talks about, infrared and different radio frequencies and microwave systems. All of these can have their applications, but keep in mind that anytime you don't have a physical connection between two devices, the data that you're sending is subject to interception, and also it's subject to data loss and interference. If you've got something blocking the signal, or if you've got some sort of a point-to-point wireless connection, if they're not aligned correctly, then you can lose connectivity. I think at the COT, we for a long time had a wireless connection going back to the main campus. That had moved a little bit out of alignment, and so our bandwidth went down significantly just because it wasn't optimized. The last section of the chapter talks about removable storage. In terms of security, this is a common way for people to get critical information out of your building. And I think we've all seen spy movies and that sort of thing where people save things to a flash drive. They hide the flash drive in their coffee mug and take that out. This is something that people do need to worry about if you're in a high security environment. I don't know that I have a whole lot more to add about this. Some of these use laser technology. Some of these are magnetic. If they're magnetic, a strong magnet is going to disrupt them. And that would be the case with diskettes, hard drives, sometimes even smart cards. Tape uses magnetic media. Thumb drives can actually be disrupted pretty easily. I know I had a lot of data that I needed to send to somebody and they didn't have a good FTP site, and so we were talking about ways that I can either burn CDs or DVDs and mail it, and he was suggesting using a flash drive, but I know that I have mailed flash drives before and they ended up corrupted after going through whatever the post office does with them. This wraps up the chapter on infrastructure. I would suggest going through the review questions and making sure that you know each of these terms here, because that's what's going to be on your test. The upcoming test is going to be on chapters 1, 2, and 3, and it's going to be identical to your homework questions. I'll give you a question, you'll have some answers, some choices. I need you to pick the right one and then also define or explain why each of these answers are right or wrong. See you next time.